is the disappearance day of Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. The other discussing about his life. He's a very important person in our disciplic line. Many reasons why. One of the big reasons why. He was the chief inspiration and shelter, shiksha, shelter for Bhaktivinoda Thakur. During some periods of time, the following of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became less prominent in the world. After the departure of the 6 Goswamis, it kind of went down and became less. After the Srinivasacharya and Narottam Das Thakur and Shyamananda, it went down a little bit. And this other period of time between Narottam Das Thakur and the revival of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, it kind of went down. But Jagannatha Dasa Babaji all the while was there. He wasn't prominent in the writing and giving the message to others, but setting the standard for the topmost stages of bhakti. We'll hear some more about that as we go forward. He was given the title Vaishnava Sarvabhauma by Bhaktivinoda Thakur because the title Sarvabhauma, it's a title, just like we know Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya from Jagannath Puri, the title. It's like a chief or a leader or an example-setting person, topmost person. Sarvabhauma, Vaishnava Sarvabhauma, the leader of all the Vaishnavas, because that was his position. And we'll begin with reciting together his pranam mantra. Many of you know the mantra. Gaura virbhava bhumistvam nirdeshta sajana priyaha Vaishnava sarvabhauma Shri Jagannathaya te namaha. So, te namaha, we offer our respectful obeisances unto Sri Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, who is respected, Gauravir Bhava Bhumistvam, who is respected by the entire Vaishnav community, and who discovered the place where Lord Chaitanya appeared. Well, he confirmed what Bhaktivinoda Thakur had discovered as the place of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we'll discuss that as we go forward. In the writings of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he traces our spiritual lineage primarily, not entirely, but primarily through a shiksha line. And this is something that Srila Prabhupada wrote in the introduction of Adi Lila, Chaitanya Charitamrita. The direct disciple of Srila Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami was Srila Narottama Das Thakur. Now we know the Diksha line was other, Lokanath, but Shiksha line, who accepted Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur as his preceptor. Srila Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur accepted Srila Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, and he goes on. So this is a shiksha line. So he's a very important person in our spiritual lineage, Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. There's a direct diksha line. When he was a young man, he lived in now Bangladesh, and doesn't say why or when exactly, but he shifted to Vrindavan, and while in Vrindavan he received Diksha, became Jagannath Das, who was the disciple of Jagadananda Goswami. And his Babaji Diksha was from Madhusudana Dasa Babaji. We'll hear something more about him shortly. Who was initiated by Uddhava Das, was initiated by Baladev Vidyabhusan. Now, in Baladev Vidyabhusan, we don't often hear the Babaji part, but he gave the mantras, nonetheless, to Uddhava Das, who gave the mantras, to Madhusudana Das Babaji, who gave the mantras, to Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. Not so much is known about his early days. It gives the place where he was born in now Bangladesh, around 1780, but it's also, that's not clear, because it seems that it was earlier than 1780, because the duration of his life is said often, at least I'm accustomed to hearing, 130 years. So if you count back from the time of his departure, it's earlier than 1780, but in any case, it's not fixed, not known. Even what family he's from, some say he was a Kayasta family, but not really known, doesn't know his father's name, mother's name. We don't know much about his early life, and so he was born in Bangladesh, stayed there for some time, and at some point in time, also that's not clear, he moved to Vrindavan, and he received Diksha, and then he received Babaji Diksha from Madhusudana Das Babaji, who was a renowned Siddha Babaji from Suryakund. Now, some of you here in the room, we know what Suryakund is. Suryakund is a place where Radharani went to worship Suryadev. So, because Radharani's place of worship of Suryadev was at Suryakund, it's a very important place for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. And Madhusudana Das Babaji made his residence there. Here's a photograph of his Bhajan Kutir place and Samadhi. And if you look on the back, you see some dark something embedded into the wall. And that dark something that's embedded into the wall is a stone that was found in that area that has the mark of Radharani's mukut or crown. Yeah, wow. Now the sandalwood dots is placed by the pujaris, but the marks on the stone, they take it as Radharani's crown. There's a pastime connected with the formation of that crown at Shila. On the wall outside the temple is this nice painting of the deity. It is said that this particular Surya deity bestows Krishna prema unto those who have no material desire. So all you have to do is get free from material desire, go to Surya Kund and pray to Surya Dev for that benediction, that Krishna prema will be yours. Here's a photograph of the deity, and the Surya image is to the left and to the right. And by the way, this deity is a bas-relief deity, meaning they can't dress the deity because the deity is extending out from a shila or from a stone. And here's a close-up. No, I didn't put this here, but I have photographs of the deity without the backdrop, before the deity. So it's a very beautiful deity. We visited there during this past Kartik month, went to Suryakund, and much to my surprise, Jayapataka Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada's photograph are on the altar. Then I met the pujari, at least one of the pujaris, seemed to be the head pujari. He spoke English, and he described that they had so much confidence in their pujari work that whoever was in charge has entrusted them. It's not like an official ISKCON temple or anything, but very committed ISKCON devotees have our disciplic succession pictures on the altar. Interesting. During his life, particularly during his life during Vrindavan and after, you get give some examples so you get an idea. His renunciation was kind of otherworldly. He was an ascetic, to say the least, and very, very renounced. During this wasn't done well. Sometimes he would chant continuously for 3 days and nights. No sleep, no food, just chant for 3 days and nights, nonstop. And during the 4 months of the rainy season, the Chaturmasya season, every year, without fail. Now, wait till you hear what he did, and you get a sense of the austerity, and how did he live so long? Because how do you live long? Do this austerity. But here it goes. During the first month of the Chaturmasya period, every evening he would have 4 bananas for a month. Then, next month, only guavas, doesn't say how many. And then the next month, only whey. So what's whey? You curdle milk, and you take the curd part out, you have left the whey, and that's what he had every day, 1 month. And on the 4th month, boiled banana flowers with no salt. Now, the austerity that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur used to do, maybe you know what that one was. He would have unsalted khichdi, and he would not shave. There were some other things. And the procedure was he would put his hands behind his back, put the khichdi on a leaf plate, and with his mouth, he would eat without raising his body, because as soon as you raise, one would raise their body. That's it. Unsalted khichdi, eaten in that manner. So when you lean over, what happens to your stomach? The capacity, the opening in the stomach shrinks or becomes compressed. And sitting up, that was it, once a day. You probably got a messy beard doing that. And who knows what the hunger experience was, but he did that. And he also did his chanting in that manner. So many rounds each day in the 4 months of the rainy season. So these kinds of very strong austerities are a little otherworldly, but some of the advanced souls, they did things like this. It's described in his biography that one time he went to Rishikesh with the idea of improving and purifying his chanting. So he decided, or it was decided, he had went there to perform a particular Purascharya Vidhi. Purascharya Vidhi for a Vaishnava is different than for one who's not a Vaishnava. Purascharya Vidhi is a purificatory ritual. Maybe you've read some things that say that the chanting of the holy name doesn't require any prior purification, such as Purascharya Vidhi. But it's an intense austerity, which he did diligently. It included getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, taking his morning bath, and going into a closed room all day long, not coming out all day long until the sunset. No speaking, no eating, no nothing. Like voluntary solitary confinement or something. Or a little yogi girl, maybe she's not ready for that yet. But that's what Jagannath, just to give an idea of his austerities, his liking for those kinds of austerities. And it is expected that after answering the call of nature, of course, if you eat once a day, you probably don't have to answer the call of nature too much. And after passing air, take a bath in Rishikesh. Once he was doing this, apparently he went more than once to do this. After observing this regimen for 2 months, he said something to Bihari, his assistant. So he started over again and went on for another 3 months doing this austerity. And when he finished, he reached the conclusion and pronounced that if you want to have darshan of Krishna in the form of Lord Chaitanya, one should perform this Puruscharya, austerity, in the manner that it's prescribed. So you get the idea. He was quite austere. And he wasn't just austere, he had a strong life. Babaji's, what are they going to do anyways? So when he chanted, he would chant very loudly, both japa and kirtan. Now sometimes there's some discussion about chanting loudly or chanting silently. Maybe you've heard that discussion. If you're a follower of Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, you chant loudly. And when he would have kirtan, in his biography, he repeated, would say this phrase, not just anytime. Nitai ki nama enechi re. Bengali is not right, but ki nama enechi re, ki nama ditechi re. O Lord Nityananda, what a wonderful name you have brought. Oh Nitai, what a wonderful name you have given. Enechi ditechi. He, when living in Vrindavan, specifically his residence was at Suryakund, he became a very celebrated person because not only because of his austerities, but his profound command of scripture. He had deep realizations of scripture and Krishna Tattva specifically. So one time, he consciously, deliberately, purposely went and requested alms from a Brijbasi street sweeper. He gave him a roti, he requested. And the street sweeper was a little surprised, but because he was being asked by the celebrated Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, he gave. And then the other Vaishnavas were hearing criticism, because you know how people are. They were criticizing him for taking the food from a street sweeper. And you're Babaji, you're supposed to be pure and exalted, and why are you doing this? And his response, why he did it, was purposeful. He said, you're all learned persons. You know the importance of the dust of Vrindavan. It shows you're charged with Krishna prema that even Lord Brahma desires to become a particle of dust in Vrindavan. So what about the street sweeper? He's constantly serving the dust, breathing it, rolling in it, bathing in it more or less. Who can be more pure than the street sweeper? And when he spoke, no one could say anything. His convictions were high, and his behaviors matched his convictions. And he didn't mind, worldly people saying things and doing things because that was his capacity. I'm going to explain a number of little pieces of descriptions of his activities, so you just get a kind of a picture of his personality and so forth. While he was with Madhusudana Das Babaji and others at Suryakund and in Vrindavan, along came this personality, doesn't give his name, but he moved from Katwa to Vrindavan because he thought by coming to Vrindavan and speaking on Srimad Bhagavatam, and he was a good speaker. He knew the Bhagavatam and he spoke very elegantly and eloquently, and he had a big following. It was very quickly. But Jagannatha Dasa Babaji and Madhusudana Dasa Babaji and the other eminent persons, they never came to hear him speak Srimad Bhagavatam. So he went to them and asked them, why is it you don't come? They told him why they don't come. They were very strong, naturally, because they're very strong personalities. Any discourse on Srimad Bhagavatam by someone who has a personal motivation isn't going to benefit anyone, even themselves. In fact, hearing discussions on the Bhagavatam from such a person who is interested in fame and fortune, it'll have a negative effect on the consciousness of the listener. So they spoke very strongly, and somehow or another, although he was ambitious and likely a little proud, he accepted what they had said. Who knows how long it took for him to say yes. But not only he accepted what they said, but his character completely changed over. Not only he stopped the Bhagavad Gita business, but he became a very humble Vaishnava. It says specifically about this man, through their association, the rest of his life, he was busy paying obeisances to every living entity in Vrindavan, seeking their blessings, feeling badly that he had this other intention and misusing Srimad Bhagavatam for his own purposes, etc. So very powerful. In his biography, Jagannatha Dasa Babaji's biography, it was explained that at one point in time he requested his assistant, we're going to hear some more about his assistant, Bihari Lal. But he requested Bihari, find me a deity. I'm very eager to worship a deity. So he went all the way to Katwa. He found this wonderful deity for Chaitanya that looked golden. And then he received it. He wanted to have nice paraphernalia made, so he went to some wealthy people that were very happy to give donation. He built a nice little temple, a place for the deity to sit. And he brought the deity back all the way to Vrindavan. And there was a big festival because Jagannatha Dasa Babaji was a celebrity by this time in Vrindavan. A big festival to install the deity. And Jagannatha Dasa Babaji personally worshipped those deities, or that deity. Now, after some time, doesn't say how long, but the fame of those deities spread, and there were some robbers that thought the deity maybe was made of gold because the color of the deity was golden. That happened in Mayapur also, by the way. Some dacoits came to steal Radha Madhava long ago. They thought the deity was gold. So when they went to steal the deity in the dead of night, as they were trying to escape from Suryakund area, their vision became blind. They couldn't see. They were wandering around. They couldn't see. And when the sun came up, they just left the deity. This came to Jagannatha Dasa Babaji's attention. This is a remote place because Suryakund is kind of in a forested area. It's not the thick of things at all. So he said immediately find a suitable place for the deity to be worshipped. He found a place. Here's the deity pictured here. And to this day, the Sonar Gauranga temple is in downtown Vrindavan, near one of the shopping areas. and a very beautiful deity and very richly worshipped. And you see an image of Jagannatha Dasa Babaji chanting. However, he had become attached to having a deity, so he requested Bihari to go find a replacement deity. Look anywhere, find. So instead of going all the way to Kutwa, because Kutwa was quite some distance away, he went to Radhakund, and miraculously, in Radhakund, in a stack of hay that was used for feeding the cows, he found a six-armed form, a Sadbhuj form of Lord Chaitanya. Radhakund. So he brought the deity back. The deity was worshipped by Jagannatha Dasa Babaji for 10 years before he left. And when he decided to leave Vrindavan, there's different reasons given why he decided to leave Vrindavan. We'll hear shortly. He requested Bihari to find a place, someone in Vrindavan to worship the deities. He went to a place where the ashram, Gopal Guru was a celebrated personality in Lord Chaitanya's lineage, a disciple of Vikreshwara Pandit, etc. And he had an ashram in Vrindavan, and they accepted the deity at that ashram, and to this day you can see the deity in downtown Vrindavan. Now, the person who was sent on all these different missions on behalf of Jagannatha Dasa Babaji was his assistant. And his assistant, Sri Bihari Lal Das, a little about him, he was from Vrindavan. He was from a cowherd family. And in the bodily sense, he was very strong. In an intellectual sense, he wasn't the sharpest. He wasn't a Brahmin. He was a cowherd man, but capable. And he served very, very lovingly, very, very faithfully. And what happens when you serve an elevated Vaishnava? What happens is you become an elevated Vaishnava. And so, although he wasn't highly learned, he became very, very capable. From a worldly perspective, he was not a well-educated man. But by serving and being in the association of Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, he became spiritually learned, and he was absorbed. And this painting that you see, this is a reproduction of a painting. It's Jagannatha Dasa Babaji being carried in a basket. In the later stage, something's up. Okay. In the later stage of his life, Jagannatha Dasa Babaji couldn't move, except when he danced. And that was pretty unusual, but he would dance sometimes. But otherwise, he couldn't move, so he had to be carried in a basket. So in 1880, that seems to be a pretty fixed date, which means that, anyway, that's the date that's given. At an advanced age, he decided to leave leave Vrindavan and go to Navadvip. Now, the version that I've heard is different than what I'm going to recite. The version that I heard is he was very eager to have darshan of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which eventually happened. But he understood Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is most merciful. We heard some of the austerities and the capacity of mind and sense control that he had. But bhakti isn't just mind and sense control, that's essential. But Lord Chaitanya's mercy is what we're looking for, or an elevated Vaishnava is looking for. And so he decided to go to Vrindavan, to Navadvip. And the local Brajvasis, they loved him and he revered him, and why leave Vrindavan? And here's his answer. You can all stay here in Brajadam because you're all pure Vaishnavas. I'm very offensive, and therefore it is better for me to stay in Navadvip. Their lordship, Sri Sri Gaurnitai, do not count one's offenses, as they have appeared to liberate all offenders. But here in Brajadam, offenses are counted, and reactions there too are strictly enforced. So it's the aspiration to reside in Vrindavan. It's all over the place in the writings of the Goswamis, not just visit and do Govardhan Parikrama and visit some temples and take photographs and hear some nice classes and see the deities, but reside in Vrindavan. It's very repeated over and over. Yet residing in Vrindavan has its consequences if you are not careful. So reside in Vrindavan and be careful and get Krishna's mercy. So when he decided to go, what happened, there's some details about what happened, but now at this stage, he's around 100 years of age, quite old, and he couldn't move, so he's in his basket. And Bihari carried him in a basket to the train station and rode the train all the way to Calcutta, and it describes what happened as he reached there. On the way, he visited a place where Bhaktivinoda Thakur was residing. I don't know the place, the name is given, but I don't know where it is, but it's in Bengal. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote an article, a short article in the Sajjanatoshi magazine about the experience he had with Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, which also tells you the kind of person. It was an Ekadasi day, and they were with one another, and apparently some other Vaishnavas. And the whole day was engaged in kirtan, and the whole night was engaged in Krishna Katha. Till 8 o'clock in the morning, people from the entire village gathered together to go on Nagar Sankirtan through the streets. They placed Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, apparently in a basket, on Bihari Lal's head and going through the street as they made their way to his ashram. It is impossible to describe Babaji Maharaj's ecstatic transformations during his kirtan. Though he is over 100 years old, he dances like a lion, and sometimes singing out the couplet. This is Bhaktivinoda's writing in Sajjanatoshi. Same. Nitai ke nama eneche re, nama eneche namer hate, shradhara mule, nama diteche re. This is a little different from the version that we heard, but it's similar. And the translation given is, what a divine name Nitai has brought. He has brought the name to the marketplace of the name and is selling it for the price of faith. Shraddha Dari. Now, does that sound familiar to some of you? One of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs, in Gitavali, one of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's songs is a song about this, where Lord Chaitanya gave a franchise, whatever the Bengali word, I don't recall, but it's the equivalent of a franchise, to Lord Nityananda and said, you can have a franchise to distribute the holy name, but you have to charge a fair price. And the fair price? Faith. And then even little faith, you can give pure holy name. So he heard this from Jagannatha Dasa Babaji and then incorporated it in a song. That just shows the creative and brilliant way of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's writings. And when they were staying at another place in Bengal with Bhaktivinoda Thakur and others, and then he decided to move to Navadvip, because that's where he wanted to go, when Lord Chaitanya had made his appearance. And when they were traveling, Bihari was assisting him, and Bihari wanted to know this is repeated in many places in his biography. There's an ashram he thought maybe we could stay there for a night or two. And Jagannatha Dasa Babaji said, no, 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 nice ashram. We'll just sleep under a tree. Now we're going to see in a moment the tree, because they actually stayed under the tree. And after some time, a wealthy gentleman bought the land that was near the tree and presented it as a gift to Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. And after the land was owned by Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, then Bhaktivinoda Thakur came along and built 2 small huts, one for him to stay and do his resting, another for him to stay and do his bhajan. Little hut, not a house. And then a certain landholder built 3 more huts and a boundary wall. And then one wealthy lady dug a well. So he just, I'll stay under a tree, but he's got a few more things than a tree. Because it rains, there's rainy season in Navadvip, so he has to stay where Bihari can stay, where he can do his bhajan and so forth. So these are recent photos taken about 2 weeks ago at the place where he stayed in Navadvip. So it's in Bengali and it's also in English. His bhajan kutir and his samadhi, not pushpa samadhi, but his samadhi. And one of the places of those huts has the deities he worshipped, Gora Gopal and Giridhari. Now, I don't have photos of those. I used to have, and I couldn't find them before this evening. So this is what, when you go there, you'll see the sign, unless they change, because they've changed things. They probably change things almost every year. It looks very different today than when I last visited. But here's another sign. This is the Bhajan Kutir. There was the temple. Now this is the Bhajan Kutir under a certain Kadamba tree, Kali Kadamba tree. And so it's a celebrated tree under which he would do his bhajan. And over on the side, you see there's a green gate. This is where he would do his bhajans. And here's inside that little space when they open the door. It's his murti. Now, this wasn't there years ago, but on the wall there's that celebrated painting. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur's bhajan place. Around the corner is a different tree. This is a bakul tree, if I remember correctly. Yeah, bakul tree. So when I visited, there was this boundary wall, but there's a place you go past where all those pieces of wood are, and the place where he sat, looking out on the other side of the wall of the Ganga, and he was intently calling to Lord Chaitanya to make his appearance before his eyes. And it's said, when I visited there, I don't know what they say today, but it's in that place that Jagannatha Dasa Babaji had darshan of Lord Chaitanya, which was the reason that I've understood always that he went from Vrindavan to Navadvip, because he had love for Lord Chaitanya and he wanted to have darshan of Lord Chaitanya. Not just he wanted to become free from reactions of offenses that he might have made in Vrindavan, but he wanted to specifically. So at this place, you see that little pink structure, and it said this is where he would perform his bhajan or japa under the bakul tree by the side of the river Ganges. This is the place where he would rest. Now they have a bed. I'm sure he didn't have a bed, but they have a bed. And there he is, in murti form, chanting. And in the same, it's not a large area at all. It's quite small, very humble. And is samadhi. And they built it up, and built it up. It looks like a very nice place now. But when I went, it was very, very simple. This is what it looked like 2 weeks ago. With, brass railings to walk up the steps and all kinds of nice things. That's okay. Bhaktivinoda Thakur had association with Jagannatha Dasa Babaji initially when Bhaktivinoda Thakur visited Vrindavan. They met one another at Surya Kund, where Jagannatha Dasa Babaji was staying. They associated for some time. And in this is the place where Bhaktivinoda accepted Jagannatha Dasa Babaji as a Shiksha Guru. Then he returned and did all of the rest of the things that he did. They met again, some like 10 years later. You've heard that description on the Ekadasi day. They had association with one another. And then periodically, Jagannatha Dasa Babaji would get the Bhaktivinoda Thakur's association. And there's a specific and an important reference made in his biography that when Bhaktisiddhanta was just 12 years old, he was already a celebrated personality in Jyotisha teachings. Jagannatha Dasa Babaji was really impressed. Not just, you could say things, but he was a very capable little boy, young boy. So he made the request of Bhaktisiddhanta that he make a Vaishnava calendar, which we still use today, and all the dates and appearance dates and timings and disappearance days, how we follow our Vaishnava calendar, came from Bhaktisiddhanta. And it came from Bhaktisiddhanta because Jagannatha Dasa Babaji requested him to create that. Isn't it a nice photograph? Pretty rare photo. Bhaktisiddhanta when he's 12. Bhaktivinoda Thakur when he was much younger. Because Jagannatha Dasa Babaji was a Babaji and Sarvabhauma, Vaishnava Sarvabhauma, many persons would come to him for inspiration, and many persons, not just inspiration, but to get esoteric teachings. Sometimes people want to get esoteric teachings. So you go to somebody who has it. They went to him, but he was inclined to give much instruction to such people. So when they came to him, instead, you can grow tulsi plants and flowers and vegetables to offer to the deity. You'll become gardeners. And they knew that Bhaktivinoda Thakur was close to him. So they requested, please petition him to help us, get esoteric teaching from him. And here's the text describing Bhaktivinoda Thakur's reply. Actually, your Guru Dev's instructions are right for you because you still have anarthas for you to try to sit and do puja bhajan and practice ashtakaliya lila smarana would be artificial. And you would just become degraded. So you should follow your Guru Dev's instructions with full faith and work hard in Krishna's service. Now, this language, as far as I understand, aside from the meanings of these terms, it's his writing, Sajjanatoshini writing. Then in time you may be able to chant the holy names. Although very, very elevated, he was very, very reluctant, more than reluctant. He didn't have a great respect for people who were showbottle renunciates. And apparently there was some number of them at that time. One time, Bihari became very sick. So sick with a fever that they called in a doctor from Calcutta. The doctor from Calcutta, after examining him, said, there's nothing I can do. He's delirious, he lost consciousness. he's going to die before the morning. So Jagannatha Dasa Babaji heard this, and what he decided to do, he sat right next to Bihari, who he loved very much. He put a tulsi in Bihari's mouth and began to chant the Hare Krishna mantra. In half an hour, his fever was gone. Now he had lost consciousness practically for several days, which meant what Bihari knew was my Guru Maharaj, Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, hasn't eaten for several days because he would only eat his cooking. So he got out of bed, took his bath, went to the kitchen and started cooking. Because he didn't want his dear beloved Jagannatha Dasa Babaji to go on any longer. Another one of these miraculous kind of events, clairvoyant kind of events, mystical kind of events, is one of those persons that Bihari went to visit to get some donation for the Sonar Garanga altar and paraphernalia was a very wealthy, famous landowner named Srinath Rai. So Srinath Rai came all the way from Katwa to visit Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. He had met Bihari, but he hadn't met Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. So he went to the ashram, he went into that area, and he just happened to see Jagannatha Dasa Babaji and asked him, "Do you know where is Jagannatha Dasa Babaji's ashram?" And he said something to the effect of, "I'm just an ordinary person. What do I know about exalted people? So I wish you luck finding him." And at the very moment, he picked up a stick and started smashing the ground. And wealthy landholder, along with his family, thought maybe he had been offended. And Jagannatha Dasa Babaji said to him, No, it's not that you have offended me. I'm not angry with any of you. I just drove away a goat that was eating the leaves of the tulsi plant growing near the house of Lokanath Goswami at Radhakund. And he's sitting in Navadvip, hitting a stick on the ground, saying he's chasing the goat away that's eating tulsis in the vicinity of Lokanath Maharaj's Bhajan Kutir in Radhakund. So this man, wealthy, he sent a telegram to Vrindavan to find out, is there any truth to this? And he got back a telegram reply saying, in fact, that's exactly what happened. So he was astounded. He was convinced that Jagannatha Dasa Babaji is not an ordinary person. Here's another one. As he was getting older, his eyelids started to droop and his vision was not so good. So when it was time to see people, he had to either lift his eyelids with his fingers, or someone would assist him when he was eating to lift his eyelids because he couldn't see. And he had the practice as he was getting older and somewhat blind. Bihari received donations from people that came to pay respects, put donations into a burlap bag. So one day, Jagannatha Dasa Babaji asked Bihari, how many rupees do I have? And Bihari immediately went and got some of the rupees, but he had an idea to use some of those rupees for some specific service. So he gave almost all but 12 rupees to Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. And Jagannatha Dasa Babaji said, Bihari, why are you keeping 12 rupees? I mean, he couldn't see, and he didn't watch him as he was doing the thing from taking the money from the bag. Please return the 12 rupees also. Bihari smiled and brought all the money. And what did he want to do with the money? He told him, take all this money and purchase rasgullas. So Jagannatha Dasa Babaji is very austere. He doesn't eat rasgullas. But he didn't run through rasgullas for himself. He offered them all to his deities, and then he told Bihari to distribute them all to the cows and the dogs in Navadvip. And Bihari asked innocently, is it okay to feed some of the local Babajis, some of the rasgullas that you offer to your deities? And Jagannatha Dasa Babaji said, I don't want to feed these sahajias. During the day, they pretend to be detached renunciates, and at night they engage in illicit sex life. He said the creatures of the Dham were elevated souls and worthy of service. That was his mindset. Then there's this celebrated, someone had given him a rather large brass plate instead of a leaf plate, a large brass plate for him to take his meals on. So Bihari would bring his meals on this large brass plate. Of course, he didn't eat much. But when he brought the meal and put it down in front of him on the large brass plate, some nearby puppies came. And the nearby puppies that came, Bihari shooed them away. And Jagannatha Dasa Babaji stopped eating and said, these puppies belong to the Dham. They're not ordinary living entities. They will not eat anything more until they come back and share the Mahaprasad from my plate. So it became, they came back. It became a daily affair where they were eating from the same plate he was eating from. Extraordinary personality. Extraordinary personality. Another occasion, so these are well-known stories I've heard since, as a little kid in Hare Krishna. So these are well accepted over all these years that stories don't change. The buildings look different. One time, Bihari was carrying him in his basket, and one fellow came along, saw him being carried in the basket, a celebrated Babaji, and he gave a donation of a rupee to Bihari. He didn't give it to Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, he gave it to Bihari to give to Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. They traveled a few miles or kilometers, and Jagannatha Dasa Babaji said, I want to return that rupee. He knew that it was 1 rupee, did not. I want to return. So when he went back to his ashram, the man that gave the donation returned, visit him, and Jagannatha Dasa Babaji said, brother, you keep your rupee. I hear that you have many rupees. I don't know how you can tolerate the biting sting of so many rupees. I'm not able to tolerate the sting of even 1 rupee. No, just proud. A wealthy person giving 1 rupee. Oh, such a heavy burden to carry all the rupees that you have. I can't carry 1 these days. You're more capable than me. It's pride. There are many, many, many such stories. Not just, very clairvoyant kind of otherworldly awareness of the world in which he was and the people around and things. So then as we going back to the prana mantra, we're almost going back to the prana mantra that we recited at the beginning. In that prana mantra, it says he's honored in part because he discovered the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, but it wasn't. He discovered the birthplace. He confirmed the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And there's details and details and details, which is more about the life of Bhaktivinoda Thakur than about Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. But because of his position as the magistrate in Krishna Nagar, there's a whole story of how he got there, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. he researched and he had some visions and some things happened. And he reached the conclusion that, first of all, the place that is considered to be the birthplace of Mahaprabhu is recent. Something like for 10 years, there was Navadvip on the western side of the Ganga. But all the books describe the Ganga was on the eastern side. Excuse me, the birthplace of Mahaprabhu was on the eastern side of the Ganga. And then he researched, and there's old maps. And the course, after Mahaprabhu's departure, the course of the Ganga shifted. And it shifted in such a manner that the birthplace of Mahaprabhu was underwater. It shifted in the easterly direction. And their birthplace was underwater. And after some years, it shifted back again. And after it shifted back again, somehow the birthplace of Mahaprabhu was on the western side of the Ganga, which was right from scripture. And because he was a magistrate, he had access to maps and histories and things. Without all the details, he reached the conclusion this is not the birthplace. So to discover the birthplace, there was a vision on top of Rani Dharmshala, etc., the vision that he saw, that this image is meant to depict the image that he saw, a very tall, luminous temple. And one of his associates and one of the assistants, they also saw. They saw it again another night. They went and he followed where that place was. And sure enough, it was a place where nothing would grow, rice wouldn't grow, not even eggplants would grow. The only thing that would grow was tulsis. You know this one, right? So he was, it was a kind of a mound, a bit of a mound. And so this must be it. So what did he do? He brought Jagannatha Dasa Babaji for the final confirmation in a basket. You know the story. And when he was brought in the basket, he jumped out of the basket and started dancing and dancing and dancing. This is indeed the birthplace of Lord Nimai. So from that, Bhaktivinoda Thakur started building a temple. It was a modest temple. Then later he gave building the current temple service to Bhaktisiddhanta, his son. But to establish the place of Mahaprabhu's birth site, it was a risk your life mission. Risk your life means he went door to door because the prevalent view was what the prevalent view was. It's over there. And he's saying it's not over there, it's over here. But rather than saying it's not over there, it's here. And requesting every gentleman to give 1 rupee. Now in Bengal, you do something like that and you're risking your life. Because there's vested interests, financial interests, in it's over there, not over here. But they didn't harm him. And he built a little place, and Bhaktisiddhanta continued on his work at his request and built the current temple. Important. When they were digging the foundation for the current temple, what did they find? But the Adhoksha Vishnu deity, the Jagannath Mishra, had worshipped, that had embedded in the mud when the Ganges had shifted its course and was underwater. They'll say it again, digging the foundation, they found the deity, the Jagannath Mishra, had worshipped. And that's now on the altar at the birthplace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We have just 2 slides remaining. This is the only known photograph of Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. It's kind of faded, etc. But it's a photograph when he was on the rooftop of the ashram that Bhaktivinoda Thakur had built on the other side of the Jalangi. How many here have been to Mayapur? So you know what I'm talking about, those of you that went. So visually, There's a tributary of the Ganges and another tributary of the Ganges. Over here it's called Ganga, and over there it's called Jalangi, but it's just a tributary of the Ganges. And on the other side of the Jalangi, is where Bhaktivinoda Thakur built a little place, Bhakti Bhavan. There, poor Kishore Das Babaji would come see him. This is Jagannatha Dasa Babaji on the roof. A photograph was taken, the only known photograph, that is pretty old. And from that, they have made more nice paintings that look like this. In his older age, he was bent over like this. You know, some numbers I've heard, number I've mainly heard is 130 years old. You follow the austerities that he underwent, and how did he live that long? By spiritual strength, I guess. So this is the Amavas, day of the moon. I made a mistake this morning. Here's the correction of the mistake I made this morning. In 2 weeks, this is the new moon or dark moon, and then there's the full moon. And what happens in the next full moon? Or Purnima. So he disappeared on the dark moon night, dark moon day at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then we saw the place where his samadhi, his body was placed in samadhi. So there's a very clear date. We don't know much about exactly his childhood and exactly when he was born, etc. That's why the numbers are so varied about how long he lived, so many things like that. Great Vaishnava. Vaishnava Sarvabhauma Jagannatha Dasa Babaji Ki Jai. So let's see if there's some discussion. Yeah. Okay. It took a lot of time to put all this together, I'll tell you. Yeah.
Entering service is easy when external circumstances are favorable. But when something changes because of low material consciousness, executing the service becomes challenging. So, how to develop and sustain?
Well, he was probably pure in heart. That was a big start. It makes it a lot easier if you're pure in heart than if you're not pure in heart. So, how to sustain is you make the mission. It's a little bit like the question this morning, not your, but the discussion this morning about, when the mind is wandering and is elsewhere, how do you keep the mind fixed? So it's purity has a price. It doesn't come easy. It comes. It's our natural state, and one has to take. So abhyas was the answer. And what does abhyas mean? And we discussed that this morning. So you stay with the process because you have faith. That's the third part of the definition that Patanjali gives for a practice. Any kind of yoga practice has to have that third part. You have confidence going to take you to where you want to go. I'm over here, and there's where I want to go, and that's life. Supposing you go to school, right? Yeah, probably. And there's an idea, at some point, if not now, but at some point in time, there's kind of like an idea of the kind of field that you'd like to work in, and maybe at some point, an idea of like the type of career and stuff like that. That may change, but there's some ideas. So that's where we're over here, and there's that over there. Between have the qualification. So the transitioning take practice to get to where we want to go. As with being material, certainly with something spiritual. And then the means is going to be different than the material a goal or objective. Well, practice. Well, then maybe some preliminaries, but you have to have purity. Amanit bambadambit. Well, start there, but that's okay. It doesn't contradict. Purity is just like Shikshastika is speaking of making the heart beat. We discussed that this morning. The first, do you know, Mataji? The first line of Shikshastika number 1. Cheta Darpana Marjan. Is that what you're going to say? Cheta Darpana Marjan. You know the meaning? Cheta Darpana Marjanam means? Cheta Darpana Marjanam means? Not sure? Cleansing the mirror of the heart. Cheta is heart or consciousness. Darpana Marjanam, cleansing the mirror of the heart. So that's purity. To do that, yes, humility and simplicity and mode of goodness things. Yeah. Sure. You have to want it. And you have to want it more than you want the other stuff you want. And, it has a pan scale. I want. It's just like 4 types of pious people render devotional service unto. You know the verse from Bhagavad Gita. Chatra vidha bhajante mam, jana sukritirnorjana. 4 types of pious Sukriti personalities, they render service to Krishna. And I want. It's on the material side. So, but that's an impetus to do devotional service. But supposing wants are fulfilled, then what? You lay Krishna. But to stay for purity has a price. You stay with it. Because it's not just, then you have to have different goal than I want. Those wants may still be there, but you have to place a priority, something that's a deeper and more profound and ultimate want or purpose of life. Or getting freed from misery or something. Your purpose. That's the price. You go there. Because you have confidence, you practice that which will be there. So you do sadhana bhakti. Now, how long will sadhana bhakti take until the bell rings? Depends. Goes back to your question. If there's more purity, it takes less time. If there's less purity, it'll take longer time. And if one is very sincere, which is his point, then it'll take less time. If one is kind of wishy-washy or complacent, it'll take more time. The time is the consideration. It's, the application of the principle of practice, and that's the price. And you just stay with it. However long it takes, you stay with it. This was the same point we made this morning. Why? You have confidence. This is going to take me to a good place, the place where I want to go. Something else? Yeah. It's not quite like that. The bestowal requires, just like Srila Prabhupada, go to Srila Prabhupada as the pure devotee. How many persons came to him? Lots, thousands. And how many became pure devotees? Not so many. Why? What's the variable besides he can bestow it and he wants to bestow it? He wants everyone to become pure. Well, there has to be something from our side. That's the price we have to pay. Well, if it's possible. You look at Putin, but little yogini. Hey, she's very calm. Sometimes, right? Sometimes not. Yes. Sadhu Sangha. How to? 2 words. Sadhu Sangha. Now, what then you this is my standard answer to the how-to questions. You can take sadhu sangha and start pulling it apart, like a cotton ball, and then there's this fiber, and then there's that fiber, and there's that fiber, and all the fibers together. That's sadhu sangha. So you may have your liking or preference for this aspect or that aspect or another aspect of sadhu sangha, but it's sadhu sangha. The answer that I just gave you is the same answer that Kapila Dev gives to Devahuti when she asks us sadhu sangha. It's devotional service that awakens through sadhu sangha. And then there's, you know who Dravida Prabhu is? You know him? Huh? Prabhupada disciple. He's fun. Besides he's scholarly, he's really fun. Before the pandemic, he would anyway. He would come to Chicago and we would do a duet. He would do and I would do, and we have a theme. So one of the things that he did, he stands up. He's kind of like, I don't know, it's not a comedian, but he's a stand-up cheerleader, and he was doing Sadhu Sangastaka, verses from Canto 3, Chapter 25, the whole section detailing Sadhu Sangha, and he would sing, the script, and then he would poeticize the translation, and they would sing the translation, and everybody's like loving it, and then he'd explain, the English translation, and then he would sing it again and sing it again, and clap hands and get the message in a very fun way. But there are verses that unpack Sadhu Sangha term by Kapila Dev. And Kapila Dev's up there. He's giving Sankhya philosophy, but he's also giving to his mother, who's not, a Sankhya person, just his mother, but an understanding of how she could fulfill the desire that she had. The feeling of great pain of separation from her husband, who she's been with for tens of thousands of years, serving faithfully. So, Sadhu Sangha, in its different dimensions, features, and stages, and so on. You know what those verses are? You're not sure. Okay. He's going to send me a text message right now so that I can send him back which are the 8 verses. And then he'll send it to you and whoever else he wants to send it to. Okay? But you're not going to forget, right? If you forget, your daughter will remind you. Yeah. And let's see if there's somebody else. Anybody else that hasn't spoken would like to say something? Okay, good. Not everyone. Not everyone. Not everyone. Yes, it does mean something. It's a particular commitment. It's a stage of life with a particular commitment. And as with sannyas, there's sannyas mantras. As with Babaji, there's Babaji mantra or mantras. I don't know what they are. But I know that sannyas comes with a mantra. So when one accepts the vow of sannyas, one receives a mantra. And then one may be called Swami or Goswami. The title goes with the sannyasi. Now, prior to our stage, one would take sannyas from one of 10, Puri, Bharati, etc., and one would take that title, not the Goswami title, for taking sannyas. So Babaji comes with mantra, and it's from scripture, but it's through disciplic succession. And one receives mantra and this little title, Babaji. Does that answer your question? Not most of the people. Not most. Prabhupada wasn't called Babaji. There are some persons, and there's some persons that call themselves Babaji, or others call them Babaji, and they are not. That's one of the complaints, one of the concerns of Jagannatha Dasa Babaji. Many persons are pseudo with a title, and it degrades the esteem of that service. Yes. Well, sense control and bhakti, sense control, and do those things of sense, because he was prepared to sacrifice. Now, he was in a different ashram, obviously, and he was because Babaji is beyond ashrams. He was beyond all of that, but he was showing the willingness, so grahastha, willingness to accept some austerity, physical inconvenience, and increasing of just like what's recommended for us on Ekadashis. Now, Hastas can also observe Ekadashi in a very special way, which means decreasing the physical demands in a very, doable way, and increasing hearing and chanting in a doable way. And Grahastas can do that. And it may help the Grahasta to do that, to be in the association of others that are more advanced and or more renounced than one is. And in their company, it becomes easier. Because when you're absorbed in the activities of Shravan and Kirtanam, when you're absorbed in the activities of Shravan and Kirtanam, you kind of lose sense of time and bodily demands and the mind's demands, just when there's absorption. So that's something a grahasta can do, and in a way that's doable. The same three regularly. This, the first one is every day, but let's say Ekadasi, twice a month. Let me increase this and decrease that, in a doable, repeated fashion, in every Ekadasi. So that's something a grahasta can do. For example, and you can do it with others. You can do it, yourself, or whatever suits you, whatever your circumstance and personality, what works well for you. So, but what's behind that is, I want to reach this goal. I'm a grahastha. I don't want to be a worldly. I want to leave the worldly, or at least dial it down a little bit, dial up a little bit the higher consciousness access to my life as a grahastha. I'm taking on responsibilities, and they occupy my mind, they occupy my energy. That's okay. It fits my nature, my psychophysical nature. Now let me elevate the spiritual within that context. So do in standard ways as far as possible. It's within repeatable ways, because always there's ups and downs, sometimes and sometimes. Sometimes you're feeling more enthused, and sometimes, so keep some minimum. You can do more than the minimum, but keep the minimum. And so that grahasthas can do all that. It's regulated life. Here's another one that a grahastha can do. I spent a good part of today and a little bit of before today focusing on Jagannatha Dasa Babaji, but something that you can do is you read something about each one of these persons on their appearance day. I know several grahasthas that's what they do. It's just a practice. They're busy. They got stuff. They got a home, and they got a job, and they got stuff they got to do. But on the appearance days, disappearance days, they take some time. So you're adding something. Well, I'm busy. How do I add something when my day is full? You just, set aside some time. When the mind is fixed like that, you can do it. Doesn't have to be all the time I spend. And where are the resources that help me get this understanding? And there's these resources. Get the resources, and you spend some time. That's it. That's a second anakadasi or appearance stage. Both are auspicious. You increase the spiritual and diminish the material on those auspicious days. Okay. Online question. Oh, I don't know. I think you should ask somebody that's skilled in this area. I'm not skilled in this area. I don't even know exactly who to refer her to that is experienced in this area. Anybody know the answer to that question? Somebody that has professional as well as devotional inclination in the area of how to help someone that's autistic be engaged. You have an idea? Autistic, autistic, autistic. So it minimally hearing, autistic, that's a bodily condition, but the ear still works. And when the ear is working, it doesn't matter how many brain waves are registering and what frequencies, it's just still working on the soul. There must be some other. The question was, there was an online question from the morning class, a mother who has a child who is autistic, what are ways in which the mother can engage their child who is autistic in devotional activity? That was the question. Oh, there's 5 people speaking at once. Mataji, you're online, and I just got course correction. It wasn't autistic, it was artistic. A-R-T. So I didn't understand the question properly. I wonder how that happened. That's easy. Give them, find out which type of art, drawing, or whatever, and give them the tools, the resources to do that, and the encouragement and the space to do that. I know some young people that are very talented because when they would sit in class like this young yogini girl here, and they're artistic in their inclinations, and they just drew and drew and drew, and then they became really good artists. And now they're way up there in their art skills, graphic arts and this and that and the other thing, and they're continuing to do it just from practice. So that's one suggestion. Here's another suggestion. Speak to some parents who have children that are artistic and ask them what do they do. Get a parenting group and find out what they do to help their children that are artistic in their inclinations. And, success breeds success, right? Okay, I'm going to end and thank you all for coming on the disappearance day of Jagannatha Dasa Babaji Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, and Jagannatha Dasa Babaji Maharaj ki. He wants me to do something that I'm going to have to say thanks, but I'm